How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today we've got the last mission before you can unlock a mission to unlock the Azov Sprinter. And yeah, it's doing a lap of this racetrack. It's called the Ring, not to be confused, obviously, with the horror films. Yeah, got a goddamn horse on me. I just amassed some vehicles that I was hoping would be the quicker out of most things. So when you go into the missions, yeah, stage 1. And then the only reason I didn't draw a blue line all the way around at this time is, one, it's the racetrack anyway, but two, you know, in case I'm taking like a bit of a tighter line and all that, I didn't want to miss one of the waypoints I'd put, and it just, yeah, like OCD troll me for no reason. Yeah, so just a lap, start and finish there. There is a few little poor design choices I will sort of mention in a minute. Yeah, as for the vehicles I got, I mean, there's like Western Star, A&K, Taiga, the 2 new Land Rovers, that Gorbachev thing. Obviously I'm taking a goddamn horse. It's the same kind of thing as yesterday though, where you can only do the mission once in this kind of format, where I select the mission via the contracts, and then obviously as I set off, the first checkpoint's already at the start line, but it doesn't start the clock until I go through it. It's a little bit weird how you can see in the top corner, I believe it counts down from 3 minutes, so if you don't complete this in 3 minutes you'll fail. When it's just a contest afterwards, you can obviously take as long as you like, you'll get a bronze and less money and whatnot, but I don't think there's a time cap as such. But yeah, as it's set out in this way, so it's counting down to 0. I've got to drop my hammer with the old loaf. And yeah, with the sort of the map and the terrain, I mean, little things when you think about it, like that boggy mud back there, it's like, yeah, cool aesthetically speaking, but we're going to be trying to race. We're just racing the clock anyway. There's an online mode where I assume, we'll get into that soon, but you can kind of like, it looks like you can race people online, so none of us are going to want to go through that boggy stuff, so we're all going to skirt around the edge every single time, because it's just physically the smartest thing to do. It'd be the equivalent on a Formula 1 game, like back in the day, remember like the old Formula 1 games, you might be able to take a shortcut, go hoofing over like a little hairpin bend and just make it across the grass with momentum, but obviously then they implemented all sorts, barriers, penalty points and all that. Yeah, it just isn't worth it. Like there, again, another one jumping off there, low flew like a goddamn beast, but that pool of mud is like, there's no possible gain to me landing in that. The only gain I could theoretically see is on that particular jump and all the rest of it, the track that you land on the other side where that mud is acts a little bit like a bowl, so if you're landing in the middle you're going to land quite flat, but if you land on the edges you might land harsher on like the left or right of your tyres, and then it might try and spring you over. But yeah, it just sort of strikes me as like, I don't know, it looks good but it doesn't play as, it doesn't make sense as much. Yeah, when I drove through the finish, it gave me this little animation, bit like Watchtower animations. I think it did it do 3 or just 2 of them? Yeah, 3 of them, but obviously there's no Watchtower. Doesn't specifically hint to where the Azov Sprinter would be. Also, like, just the fact that it did sort of the Watchtower looking cutscenes, it didn't automatically unlock all the map, for example. I've still got the same, you know, little black spots and shaded sections that I haven't got my my loaf and radar trailer to yet. And yeah, now you can see that there's a mission that's highlighted here. I've been down here already to look at this Sprinter, and that mission was never there. So once you've done this final one, the racetrack, yeah, it'll unlock that. I'll be honest, I don't know what the mission is completely. I believe you just got to tow the Azov Sprinter back to the garage. Obviously I already had Dolphin and Loaf there. I just cut that out because I was I ended up moving the Dolphin away from the truck in case I was going to click accept on here, and I didn't want it to already do vehicle discovered. I'd just like to get a separate bit of footage for it. And then yeah, when I was here I was like, nah, I won't press accept. I'll just leave it for now. But yeah, the mission's there. I think once I collect it, I've just got to, like I say, drag the Sprinter back to, I'd say either this racetrack or I'd imagine really the garage. And then once you do that, it'll be ours. As well, just to mention really quickly, because someone asked it and I forgot to mention it the other day, on that mission where you had to deliver the Taiga, the Voron and the CK, they stayed there at the end of the mission when I completed it, but I don't believe we get to keep them. Right, now, the issues. I was going to go and do a lap in the Dolphin, but the solo version of the mission is here in the pit lane. And I was looking around thinking like, right, so every time we go to activate it, you got to drive through this crappy mud in the pit, which is pretty stupid. So I activated it anyway because I was, you know, just testing things, looking around. I was seeing if I could like do this one. This is the same thing called the ring. It's just co-op, and then if you read in the description, it says like you can race people, I believe, live. And at the minute, there's a couple, like multiple reasons I'm making a video. I don't necessarily want to race with someone that they might not want to be on YouTube, if you know what I mean, or just all sorts of things. And it's like, I don't even know if I'd be able to hear people or what, but they might say stuff that it's like, no, I don't really want that on YouTube or whatever. Just all sorts of things. But the other stupid thing is, just before I was about to switch vehicle, I noticed that there was a checkpoint after the finish, and I thought, oh, maybe when you drive through that it'll restart the clock, but it didn't. And then it makes you think, so you have to go through the pits to activate the single version of the race, but the first checkpoint is at the finish line or start line, which you'll be past by the time you come out of the pit. So it's a completely stupid setup. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't do a flying lap of the ring solo, because yeah, you like, unless you're gonna have to park on the square facing backwards or sideways at best, activate the mission, and then pull out of the side of the pit and go through the start. Now this mission here, it says about it's teaching you, it's not a bad thing to, like, when you set off, go into high gear. Most of us probably know about it, unless you're a bit newer to the game, and then drop it back into auto to get a bit of extra speed. I was looking at the top corner because it went to silver. That checkpoint doesn't go all the way across the map, whereas the other ones for the previous event did, so I missed the side of it. But the point being, like, you get a gold for 10 seconds. You've got to drive from this square to just past the finish. But as you can see, you can cheat the system because you can set off, you know, way before you get to the square to activate it, and you're already going flat out by the time you even start the mission. And then yeah, I got to there, 10 seconds is gold, anything over that is silver, well, 10 to 15 seconds, or 11 to 15 I suppose. And then yeah, 15 and above, or 16 then, is bronze. So, what I've decided to do in the end, it's not completely ideal, but I was like, well, what the hell do I do now? Because I've just spent hours getting all these vehicles together, equipping them all, deciding which ones I want, and then I can't even do the thing properly. So what I've decided to do instead, I've set off, I've done a lap of some trucks, and I've just worked it out on my, well, not on my phone, but as I'm editing this I can obviously see how long the footage is. So what I was doing was, when I drive underneath that like big archway on the start finish line, I'm kind of starting the clock, and then when I go past that again, I'm stopping the clock, and then I've got the times written down here on my phone. So I'll do it that way. At some point I will look into the co-op stuff, but like I say, it's one of them things where it's far more convenient that I could just activate a solo mission and get on with it, if you know what I mean. Going online just opens up so many other variables that, yeah, it's just not ideal. But why couldn't they have done, like, I don't know, half the track is the co-op checkpoint and the other half, like, just two boxes next to each other, one's co-op, one's solo. Putting it in the pit lane is stupid. It's sort of like, and I'm not always, when I say like the SnowRunner devs and stuff, it's not necessarily strictly the devs, because I've heard of a lot of situations within various companies, Activision and all sorts, where obviously the devs are the ones that probably actually give quite a fuck about the game, and they're putting a lot of effort in and all the rest of it, but there's people above them that it's just a product to them. It could just as easily be a hairbrush for sale or a game. They don't care that it's a game, they don't care how it plays, whether people enjoy it. Well, they do in the sense of, like, as long as they can sell it, they don't really care about, like, the ins and outs of the game. So, and this sort of feels, you know, a little bit like whoever had to build this has to get it okayed by someone above them who sits in an office, thinks about the money side of things, not the gaming side of things. And because this looks aesthetically nice, like, oh look, there's a little mud patch in the middle of the racetrack and blah, but it's like, yep, gets thumbs up, but there was never any, like, it's almost fascinating. It's like multiple people made this, and not one person said, hang on a minute, the start of the solo race is in the pit, but the first checkpoint is at the finish or start. Yeah, the Dolphin, by the way, did 209. This next up is the new Land Rover. I'll apologies, off the top of my head, I can't. Oh, well, in the corner, Land Rover, Defender, Summit. Oh, so they're both called Defenders. I didn't even know that. Well, we'll just call this the new one. I'll just call the old one the Defender. Yeah, to be fair to this, actually gets its foot down pretty nicely. I appreciate someone said to me about changing the tyres to the Land Rover tyres. I remember now why I originally went with the chained was because the original tyres you can only get in a 31 inch, whereas the other tyres I think it's 32 inch you can go up to. And I already didn't like how small the tyres look on this. I still don't like how small the tyres look on it. But to be fair, it is actually a pretty decent scout vehicle. It's got some nice oomph to it. Like I think it's got the Hummer engine, but it feels less restricted and yeah, just slowed down. There's other elements of this map. It doesn't really seem to be affecting this vehicle, but you know, could this be a little bit of like they've made sure this vehicle is decent because they're selling it for money? And there's, well, again, I'll get into it in soon because it sort of be when the footage is there to be able to talk about it. But yeah, it kind of hints to me that they know how to fix certain issues on this lap or track or whatever, but they've only done it with the DLC. And again, it'd be nice to have the Azov Sprinter. I mean, it's sort of good in theory. Let's do a load of missions to unlock the Sprinter. I'm cool with that concept, but it's like yeah, let's introduce races, and you have to do the races to unlock the race truck. By which point you've already done the races. So yeah, and now because the contract version of the race has gone forever, I'll never be able to do a flying lap of this in the Azov Sprinter because I'll have to go through the pit and then I won't be able to hit the first checkpoint. That new Land Rover, by the way, did 1 minute 45. So yeah, pretty decent. This is now obviously the old one, the Defender. I prefer the look of this certainly, but this, it turns and like it jiggles more. You're correcting the steering a bit more. It's kind of like it's got a very short wheelbase, and it just feels like it's, when you steer, it almost trips over itself a little bit like the Car Marshal does. Well, they might have fixed the Car Marshal, but either way, from the old school infamous Car Marshal that was a maniac, this isn't as bad. And it's still a nice vehicle. You can see it's still getting a nice pace, but you can also see I'm steering left and right constantly. It's just, it won't go in a straight line. And this is a big reason why I like the loaf. And it's one of those subtle things where you go and look at the loaf lap and it's just smooth as anything. I can let go of the steering wheel, and as silly as it sounds, I've usually got a coffee next to me or whatever, or the cat's here. I can point the loaf in the direction I want to go and squeeze the trigger, and I'm sipping my coffee, doing whatever, and it's like the loaf's just, it goes where I want him to go. But yeah, vehicles like this, it's, well, not just like, I don't necessarily mind having to steer left and right to correct it, because you're in a race, probably do that on a lot of like racing games anyway. But as you can see, it often gets a little bit too much, kicks the back end out a bit too easily, and so on. Appeared, I could have got a little bit lucky because the roof might have just hit that sort of hill bit at the side, but it appeared to roll back to its wheels pretty easily, so that's nice. And what I've done, by the way, you'll see in just coming up, I do end up tipping just before the end. I've cut it out just for the purposes of now I can still, if that didn't happen, well, I've let it cost me a little bit of time, but not as much as it would, if you know what I mean. So we can still get a rough time, but obviously this is a bit of a sloppy lap, to say the least. But it illustrates the point. I didn't want to do another lap and try and get a clean lap, because the point is this is a little bit erratic to drive, and as you can see, it's constantly trying to pull to the left or the right. So the time ends up being 2 minutes 15, and that includes the roll after I did the jump. But other than the footage you see, nothing else of that crash at the end. Next up, the old Gorbachev. By the way, the loaf, the original, like the first track I did, the first lap, whatever, for the contract, did it in 2 minutes 6, which is pretty decent. I think, yeah, that was faster than Dolphin around here. See what I mean? He's a goddamn beast, because he just stays planted and he goes where he's going. So yeah, the loaf ain't as slow as you think. This thing, again, I've got to be honest, sadly, not much of a fan, just because it's a pain in the arse to drive again. And that's not going to be the situation or the case in every situation. Obviously, it's like the Loaf, for example. It's rare I'm driving him, you know, along a big fat highway because I'll just jump in a Dolphin, stick the right shoes on and I'm off. But the Loaf, I'm weaving around like, you know, little mountain tracks around trees, all sorts of stuff like that, where top speed or handling at top speed isn't of the highest priority. So there's still areas that are no doubt in this game where this vehicle could be a very good vehicle. Seems to have pretty good like turning circle and all the rest of it. It's got some decent speed. You got all-wheel drive. You got the diffs if you go into the low range. It can have a roof rack. Obviously, I've got no roof racks on. There, it was pulling to the right. I was applying steering quite a lot to try and... Obviously, if you just flat out apply left steering, it'll spear to the left and drift out. So you got to keep like flicking it on and off really quick. But I was. It just still, it drew me over to that edge and I hit it. So I suppose a bit of a crappy lap. But again, after tonight, like I say, I spent hours getting the vehicles together, and it just gets a little bit anticlimactic with like that it wasn't as well thought out as I was hoping. And the other thing is it's hard to see on screen. You'll know it from the feel of it. That's what she said. It just feels like there's something holding you back on this track. It's almost like you're driving through invisible water. That imagine if you were, you know, if there was like water as deep as your wheels across the whole track, but you can't see it, but it's affecting the way. It's like that. Trucks that normally put the power down just aren't the way they normally do on a road or whatever, so there's some restrictive coding going on this track, which I think is a poor choice. I used this. Long story short, it was a nice little epic crash, so I did like that. I like this little Taz. It's too heavy at the front. It has zero weight at the back, and it's like, I don't know, it'd be like driving a penny farthing, but the little tiny rear wheel is like a shopping trolley wheel. You're so heavy on the front end, your back end is mere kilograms away from lifting up off the floor. It might be worth putting the fuel tanker on that Taz, because that does then plant the back end down. Again, I mean, I'll be doing both these tracks and others in the future, so I can't get every vehicle on tonight. The video will be stupidly long and all the rest of it. And yeah, just quickly, the Gorbachev did 2:05. I did clip that wall just before the jump and stuff, so it could definitely get sub 2 minutes. I'd definitely say though, apart from the goddamn horse, obviously, the new shape Land Rover Defender thing was probably the nicest out of those 3 new Scouts, like the new Defender, old Defender, and the Gorbachev. Somebody said in the comments about could I please try the Loadstar, and yeah, I agree, it's a good choice. Possibly, I don't know if it would have suited yesterday's track, but still, nonetheless, it was a good shout to make, because the Loadstar, even though it's counted as a Scout, it has the same running gear as the trucks, so it has a truck gearbox, which you get faster in high gear than you would in like the Scout gearboxes, and I believe it's got 8 gears, not 6. The high range pulls better, everything. Yeah, it's nice, to be honest. It's a good old truck. I could have took the rear bed off, I wasn't sure. I don't know how much of a difference it made. If I'm honest, I like the look of it, sort of like this. I did actually unequip it in the garage, and then I was like, nah. Didn't look as good with just like a bare naked frame at the back. But again, this is an incredibly smooth driving Scout. I'd say it's definitely sort of up there in like top 3, something like that, of my favourite Scouts. And for that one, did 1 minute 40, so that's pretty rapid. And again, like, you're not correcting the steering every 0.1 second and all the rest of it. Well, yeah, this is the Taiga, so you'll see. At this point, I was like, oh my god, what have they done to you, Taiga? This thing used to be an absolute monster of a truck. And now, can you see how restrictive the map is? Like, even just those of you that have driven the Taiga surely can tell that this ain't... Look at it, it's like, what, am I wading through treacle? At that point, I was like, oh, hell no. I went for the sakes of fairness, because I've said reasons why I like the chain generally, but obviously there's certain situations I like muds and all the rest of it. Yeah, I was curious myself. So I've recovered to the garage, put the muds on, and you can still feel it. It's probably a little bit of a cleaner line through there, but look, it's definitely like it's dropping down the gears again. I'm having to put it in high. Coming round here, I feel like I'm starting to slow down to a crawl. So yeah, all I'll say regardless is, in this particular case, the tyres ain't what's doing that, because there was other vehicles tonight doing the same thing. And the Taiga ain't normally like that. Or, I haven't driven the Taiga as much recently. It definitely didn't used to be like that. But, again, there's other vehicles I've driven recently as yesterday in the last video, that were doing the same thing around this track. And they weren't yesterday in what I would really fairly consider to be much harsher roads and terrain and all the rest of it. Like, in theory, this map, I know it's a dirt road, but a compacted dry dirt track like this, in theory, you know, you could drive a Ferrari around it or something. I know if you drop the hammer you're going to be wheel spinning and all sorts, but yeah, it shouldn't be holding you back to the degree it is. Nice little jump there. I'm surprised it took as much damage as it did. Quite a few trucks were taking damage there. It is what it is. If you carry on just up here, you can go a little bit wide on the track, and there's like almost like a mini pit, and it's got a service square thing in it where you just drive through it and it automatically fixes you. Yeah, if I went right there and just went wide, which is still pretty, you know, cool idea. I mean, it obviously cost you a little bit of time in the scheme of things, but so will having a knackered engine and all the rest of it. Yeah, for the Taiga, I did 149, so not terrible by any means, but you can just tell, like, it didn't feel enjoyable to drive around because of that restrictiveness. This another one. This doesn't make it all the way around, you'll see, but I drove this yesterday. Got a bit of punchiness going now, but when you get to about here, there's just stuff starts to like hold you back a little. There you can see it sort of catches me a bit, and look how it just, you lose all your speed. You got to put it into high. And this vehicle put the best time yesterday in yesterday's event, whatever, I can't even remember what it was called now. I only had to name the video like a day ago. Yeah, I mean, look at it. And for me personally, it just ends up like, yeah, in your head you're like, oh god. You get like a stress feeling, but yeah, so when you're waiting for something to just get on and do it, and it's like, why will you not put the hammer down, game? Which, who knows, maybe they've done it in terms of like, if they didn't, everything would be too quick and go flying off the sides. But one, let me find out the hard way. Secondly, I could always drop down to an off-road gearbox, which should be a slower set, right, a slower ratio. I'd have less speed overall. Thirdly, I could sit in high gear, which isn't as fast as you can theoretically go in the top speed in auto. Yeah, it was a nice little crash to end it all, but again, it wasn't feeling enjoyable to drive it. It was like, so I didn't really need to like recover it and all the rest of it. So like I said, I didn't really get a time for that. This beast, Loaf, goddamn professional, he's gone and imported some special shoes. Even had to go to Maine and find this. This is yeah, these like the Air Jordans of shoes. They don't even make them anymore. It's a twin steer with the big tyres, but it's still got the stock suspension, which, yeah, you can't do anymore. It was a glitch you used to be able to do, but they patched it. And yeah, that's it. They don't make them anymore, but Loaf, he's got a good collection. And again, look at it already. I was like, oh my god. I already knew by now this wouldn't be as enjoyable as I was hoping it was going to be. Look at it. This is the twin steer. I know I've drove Fox's twin steer quite a lot, and I appreciate that in the scheme of things that's going to give me more like, you know, you start thinking of that as the baseline, but the reason why I originally liked the twin steer was because the high gear was punchy as anything, and it just absolutely smashed its way through terrain. It had no business really doing, but it did anyway. Obviously since then we've got the all-wheel drive, which is even nicer. And yeah, imagine if like the surface of this entire track was given the friction stats of, well, either a normal just tarmac road on this game. I was going to say the runway in White Valley. Say the runway in White Valley, but forget the ice aspect of it. Just so you don't slip in every tyre except chained. But yeah, this is sort of like, is officially, it doesn't even feel like the dirt coding. Certain sections feel harsher than that. They feel more like they've been matched with sort of that boggy mud up ahead. It feels the equivalent of like you'd be driving through that. So yeah, the jump was certainly less epic as well. Took a pretty good hit on the front. The reason why I wanted to try the twin steer was because obviously in high gear, the twin steer's got the biggest wheels in the game of a vehicle that has high gear. And my gut feeling, as I've said, is the game seems to let, say it just makes the wheels turn 2 times a second in high gear. If you've got a bigger wheel, you cover more distance for those 2 revolutions of the wheel, and it just seems to be that's the way it plays out. Trucks with bigger wheels go faster in high gear because they've got bigger wheels and they're travelling further per revolution. Yeah, so for that one, 152, twin steer and loaf, so pretty decent, one of the best times in the game. I believe in the end the Loadstar so far, 140 was a pretty nice time, so cheers for suggesting that one on my fucking phone. Stop charging again. Just stay charged, phone. Right nightmare. It's like the cable's about a week old now and it's already acting like it's fucking 18 years old and ready to start claiming a pension or something. Is this? Oh yeah, in the end, I didn't even originally have this out, but it was just a last minute kind of like, after I was a bit deflated by the lack of hammer dropping going on, I figured maybe the CT680, because every now and then it was a bit of a quirk where it flew up the, I believe it was the Quarry Hills. Because the way the suspension works on this, it's not normal. It's like, as someone called it, rocker arm suspension. I don't know if that's like a well-known name, but I like it. It made, as soon as he said rocker arm suspension, I kind of, yeah, I do actually somehow know what a rocker arm is, and it made sense. So the 2 rear axles are kind of connected to each other. So if you tip one down, the other one will go up, and so on. They're like on a seesaw. Imagine each axle is on like one end of a seesaw. And sometimes the lack of suspension is not... The map can't rob speed off you by squidging the suspension. I don't know, it's sort of hard to explain, but again, it sort of does make sense. There's no give, there's no travel in the rear, so it can't kind of bounce around and dig into the mud. It just kind of stays as a flat plank that you're flying along in. So I figured I'd give it a go. I've just even realised as well, I haven't 100% checked, but some of my footage could have had like a little second glitch, so some of these times, it was one of them, I did 1 lap of each vehicle, so yeah, I'm not saying these are like absolute the best of the best flying laps, just to get a general feel of the situation. And yeah, that got 141, so that's pretty quick. I was actually a second behind the Loadstar, so kind of turns out the rocker arm, yeah, just the lack of suspension at the back actually did seem to help with that. I'm pretty sure I could probably get 140 if I'm a second off. So yeah, that's about it for today really. I've got the live stream tomorrow, which I'll probably do mods, and again I'll probably go flying around on here because it'll be interesting to see which mods can overcome that feeling like you're wading through water. And yeah, then I'll get the Sprinter done. But yeah, anyway, that's about it for today though. I hope you enjoyed, I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreon members, and yeah, I'll be back soon. Oh yeah, and get yourself a loaf because it's goddamn professional.